I have had an incredibly amazing experience with the EMC process. And let me start off by saying I was open to learning, but I was like, this is not going to work. You know, I have five kids and their ages are 9, 11, 13, 15, and 17. I was very, very skeptical, but open to learning. And I did learn so much. It gave me so much confidence to really express myself after being so ashamed of how I was feeling in the relationship, and then give me the strength to rebuild the relationship with my kids in a securely attached way. I don't even know where to begin. I can tell you guys all the benefits that I've gained from learning the process and using the process on my kids, but not just my kids, everybody in my life. I grew up feeling very ashamed of how I felt, not knowing how to express myself. I remember, I didn't even know like what a fight was. I didn't even know like that I had emotions and I had feelings, and I felt so self-conscious. I was not confident, and I felt very, very scared to express myself and very ashamed. Like shame was just like such a huge feeling for me. And I would always just like secretly think like, oh my gosh, no one will ever know how I'm actually feeling. And like, I feel so terrible, like such a terrible person. And every time I owned a business for 10 years. It was a yoga and Pilates studio. And every time I experienced anything negative with a customer, I took it so hard. It was so difficult for me to get over that experience. Conflicts that I had in my relationships, I didn't know how to deal with them. In my business, I had 45 employees and I didn't know how to communicate with them. I didn't know. Everything was like, oh, yeah, it's fine, pretending like everything was okay. I didn't know how to help them through different challenges that they were experiencing. I just felt like so unequipped. And I oftentimes, when I did get into conflicts, I just turned it on myself. Like I blamed myself. I'm never going to be good enough. Like I don't know how to handle this. Like I'm such a terrible person. And it took me into such a deep, dark hole. And that was like a very repetitive pattern that I went through. So there was a lot of like people pleasing because I wanted to make sure everybody, liked me. There was a lot of like taking on the blame and feeling the weight and the pressure of everything. I also felt alone. I felt very much alone, not supported. I felt like I was constantly doing things wrong. I couldn't get on top of things. And yeah, it was very defeating.
You are so strong and courageous to share that. Thank you, Paulina. What about your children? How was it before you started the process?
So I love kids, and especially when they were little, I just loved it. I love it now, but it's a little bit different. And I just didn't know how to handle the challenges that came with having children. This was the biggest struggle that I experienced was my ex-husband and I had very different parenting styles. And I would panic and not know, I would like go to shaming and blaming and criticizing and judging them and not even knowing what I was doing. And I would say things like, I don't want to be like my parents were with me. Like, I don't want to do those same things. But that same pattern was still showing up in the way that I was parenting, even though I had like different, maybe on the surface, it looked like I was responding differently, but it was those same patterns that were coming out. And when I got divorced, it was very, very difficult for my older two kids. They're 17 and 15 now. And it was very, very challenging for them to experience that divorce. And they had some very difficult moments in that transition time. And I didn't know how to help them process their emotions and their anger and their hurt and their sadness when we were going through that time. When they would get upset about something, like especially my daughter, she would get so angry inside and she would like scream and throw things and hit her brothers, and she would get so overwhelmed and I would like hold her by the shoulders like, what's going on, tell me. Like I was so I was so stressed that she was so upset. And then I would get upset because she would be so she would respond to her big emotions through aggression, anger, like an aggression. And I didn't know how to deal with that. And now I realize, I mean, there's been so many profound changes and transformations in my kids. I almost even want to share what happened last night because it was like so amazing. But I was at that moment, I'm like, what am I gonna do? And she would like hide under the table when she got really upset, or I'd have to like force her into her bedroom and hold her down because she'd be so violent. And then she would feel so guilty, and a lot of crying and shame. And that was really, really sad to witness, especially if I wanted to spend time with somebody else. Like, let's say I had a date or I had a friend that was a guy after the divorce. That was so difficult for her. And partly they felt like if they did like the person that was in my life, that they would be betraying their dad. They felt like very heavily like it was such a betrayal. So they felt torn between like wanting to accept the person that was in my life, but also like not wanting to turn on their dad because they knew how much he didn't want to be divorced. So so that's just one example. There's a lot of different examples, the way the siblings interacted with each other, like how they were fighting, how they were responding to me asking them to do things or, my requests as a parent. Before I was like taking their things away, or I would raise my voice. I